On October 22, 2025, Prime Minister Mark Carney gave a very important speech. He spoke at the University of Ottawa to a large group of young students. His main topic was Canada's economic future. His plans will soon become part of his government's first budget, scheduled for November 4. Canada is at a crucial point. Prime Minister Carney's Liberal Party won the recent election, but does not have a full majority of seats in Parliament. His government holds 169 seats, 3 fewer than needed for a majority. This means the upcoming budget is very important. If other political parties do not agree with it, another federal election could happen very soon. The country also faces significant money problems. Financial experts predict Canada will have a very large federal deficit, possibly $70 to $75 billion. This would be the biggest deficit in 3 decades, not counting times of crisis. A large deficit means the government will spend much more money than it collects. The national debt is growing because of this spending. Despite these financial worries, Prime Minister Carney promised major changes. He spoke about making generational investments for Canada's long-term future. He also said private companies would be encouraged to invest a lot of money. However, he also gave a serious warning. He told Canadians they must be ready to make sacrifices. He repeated this word but did not explain what these sacrifices would be. This creates a big challenge. Prime Minister Carney wants to invest a lot of money in new projects, but he also needs to cut government waste and manage the increasing debt. He must find a way to do both. Too much spending could harm Canada's good AAA credit rating, which helps the country borrow money. His bold plan aims to change Canada's economy, but it faces many political and financial challenges. 2. A new plan for trade. Prime Minister Mark Carney shared an important new plan for Canada's economy. He wants to double Canada's sales to countries other than the United States. This big goal aims to add an extra $300 billion in trade over the next 10 years. This change is happening because the United States has new trade rules. President Donald Trump has made new tariffs, which are like taxes on goods from other countries. For example, he put a 25% tariff on many Canadian goods. He also added a 10% tariff on energy products and 25% on steel and aluminum. Tariffs were also put on cars and car parts. These actions by President Trump have made trade with the U.S. much harder for Canada, disrupting supply chains and threatening jobs. Prime Minister Carney said that the decades-long time of Canada getting closer to the U.S. economically is over. Canada's former strengths, based on close ties to America, have become weaknesses. More than 75% of what Canada sells to other countries still goes to the United States. This makes Canada very dependent on its southern neighbor. The new U.S. trade policy has changed things for good, Carney explained. To fix this problem, the Canadian government is looking for new trade partners. They are making new deals around the world. For example, Canada has signed important foundational agreements with the European Union for both defense and trade. Canada also has a deal with the United Arab Emirates on artificial intelligence and with Germany on critical minerals needed for new technologies. Canada is also working hard to build stronger ties in Asia. The government is talking about a new free trade agreement with the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, known as ASEAN. This group of countries has almost 700 million people and a very large economy, offering great new chances for trade. Canada hopes to finish these important talks by the end of 2025. Also, a trade agreement with Indonesia has been finalized and is almost ready to be signed. It should start in 2026. These steps show Canada's new focus on selling more goods to many different parts of the world to build a more stable economy. 3. Building a bigger Canada. The Prime Minister, Mark Carney, also spoke about big new projects for Canada. He called these nation-building projects. The government wants to build many important things across the country. These projects are a key part of his plan to make Canada's economy stronger and more independent. Carney believes these projects will create jobs and help Canada grow. 5 major projects are moving forward quickly. A new government office, the Major Projects Office, is helping to make this happen faster. These projects are expected to bring more than $60 billion in new money for investment. This shows the government's strong focus on new construction and economic growth for the future. One of these important projects is to make more liquefied natural gas, LNG, in Kitimat, British Columbia. This expansion will double how much gas the facility can produce and export. Another big project is a new nuclear power plant in Ontario, known as the Darlington New Nuclear Project. This plant will help provide more clean energy for the region. Also, the Contrecoeur Terminal Container Project will make the port in Montreal much bigger. This expansion is important for improving Canada's ability to trade goods with other countries. Lastly, there are plans for 2 new copper mining operations in Western Canada. Copper is a very important metal used in many modern technologies and industries. A very important long-term goal for Canada is to develop a place called the Ring of Fire in Ontario. This remote area is about 500 kilometers north of Thunder Bay. It is incredibly rich in many important minerals. These include chromite, which is used to make stainless steel, as well as nickel, copper, platinum, gold, and zinc. These critical minerals are essential for new technologies like electric vehicles, advanced batteries, and green energy systems. The Government of Ontario has already committed nearly $62 million to rebuilding parts of the road network that will serve as the gateway to the Ring of Fire. The main goal is to build a strong network of all-weather roads. This will allow mining operations to run smoothly and consistently for many years. However, these ambitious development plans face significant challenges. Some indigenous communities have expressed strong concerns. They worry about being left behind and not having a full say as governments rush to use the resources in their traditional territories. Some indigenous groups have also started legal cases against provincial laws. These laws were designed to fast-track major projects. The tension between economic development and the protection of indigenous rights and lands represents one of the most complex challenges facing Prime Minister Carney's infrastructure agenda. The government needs to find ways to work with these communities. 4. Homes for everyone. Prime Minister Carney's plan for Canada included a big focus on housing. Many people needed a good home they could afford. To help with this, the government started a new agency. It is called Build Canada Homes. This agency began its work in September 2025. The government gave it $13 billion to start. The main goal of Build Canada Homes is to build many more houses. Over the next 10 years, the agency wants to double the number of new homes built. This is a very big goal. They will especially focus on homes that are not sold for profit and are affordable. This means houses will be available for people who need them most. These include homes for people who are homeless or might soon lose their homes. The agency will help build places where people can live for a short time or get support. Build Canada Homes will use special ways to achieve its goals. First, it will use land that the government already owns. There are 88 such places, which are large areas, almost the size of a big city downtown. Second, the agency will give money and support to groups that build houses without making a profit. It will also work with companies that build houses. A key part of the plan is to use modern ways of building. This means using factory-made homes. Parts of houses can be made in factories and then put together on site. This way of building can make homes much faster. It can also make them cheaper. The government hopes to cut building time by half and costs by 1/5. It also wants to build homes that are good for the environment. These homes will use Canadian technology, Canadian workers, and Canadian wood. This will also create a new housing industry in Canada. Some first projects are already planned. For example, 4,000 affordable homes will be built in 6 cities. These cities include Ottawa and Toronto. There is also a fund of $1.5 billion. This fund will help groups buy buildings that offer rent-controlled housing. This stops people from losing their homes because rent goes up. Another $1 billion will go towards homes for people who need quick help or support. This plan aims to make sure every Canadian can find a safe and affordable place to live. It is a big step to help many families across the country. 5. A stronger army. Prime Minister Mark Carney announced a major change for Canada's military. The government planned to spend much more money on defense. This new plan aimed to meet the target set by NATO, which is to spend 2% of the country's total economy, known as GDP, on defense. For the 2025-26 fiscal year, this meant about $63 billion. The ambition was even greater, with plans to increase spending to 5% of GDP by 2035. This represented one of the biggest increases in Canada's military history. For the 2025-26 year alone, over $9 billion in extra money was set aside for the military. This budget included important investments for personnel and upgrading military bases. It also covered improvements to digital systems and cybersecurity measures. A significant part of the money was for expanding military tools and equipment. The government also aimed to strengthen its relationships with defense companies and build new defense partnerships with countries other than the United States. To make buying military equipment faster and more efficient, Prime Minister Carney's government created a new defense investment agency in October. This agency was placed within Public Services and Procurement Canada. Its main job was to fix Canada's old way of buying military gear, which had often been slow and complicated. In the past, the Canadian Armed Forces sometimes waited many years, even decades, for important equipment to arrive. However, not everyone was sure that the government could spend such large amounts of money so quickly and effectively. Critics raised concerns. For example, Conservative Member of Parliament James Bazan warned that changing the long-standing culture of slow decision-making in government purchasing would be very difficult. He suggested that the department might use creative ways of counting money to simply appear to meet the NATO spending targets on paper. With the government's first budget coming out on November 4 and half of the fiscal year already over, many people doubted if the new agency could really speed up spending as planned. There was widespread uncertainty about the government's ability to implement such a large and rapid increase in defense spending. 6. The money problem. The government faced a serious money problem. Experts predicted that Canada's federal deficit would be very large, possibly reaching around $75 billion for the fiscal year 2025 to 2026. This amount was significant, making it one of the largest deficits in decades, not counting times of recession or global health crises. A combination of factors led to this large debt. The government had decided to cut taxes in several areas. For instance, income taxes for lower-income Canadians were reduced. Other revenue sources were also affected, such as the cancellation of a digital sales tax and the removal of the Goods and Services Tax (GST) for first-time homebuyers. These changes meant the government would collect less money. At the same time, the government planned many new programs and investments. Money was needed for ambitious projects, like building more houses, strengthening the military, and developing major infrastructure across the country. These new spending commitments significantly added to the growing financial challenge. As a result of less income and more spending, the national debt was steadily growing. This raised concerns among financial experts. They warned that if this trend continued, Canada might lose its top credit rating. Currently, Canada held a strong AAA credit rating from some major financial agencies. However, organizations like Fitch Ratings had already issued warnings. They explained that if the government went ahead with all its promised spending plans, Canada's deficits could rise too high. This could lead to the country's gross general government debt becoming more than 90% of its total economy. This level of debt would be almost double what many other highly rated countries typically have. Losing the AAA credit rating would have serious consequences. It would signal to the world that lending money to Canada was a riskier investment. As a result, Canada would have to pay more interest when it borrowed money in the future. This would make it more expensive to fund public services and future projects. The government needed to find a careful balance to manage its economic plans. 7. Big promises and big cuts. Prime Minister Mark Carney stood before young students and made a big speech. He promised many new things for Canada. He spoke of large investments to build a better future. But at the same time, he also spoke about cutting government spending. This was a difficult message to deliver. Carney wanted to spend a lot of money on big projects, but he also needed to save money. He told all federal government departments to find 15% in savings. These savings needed to happen over the next 3 years. This meant billions of dollars would be cut from their daily operations. Carney said this was important to stop government waste. He aimed to make the government more efficient and use public funds better. The Prime Minister used the word sacrifices many times. He told Canadians that they would need to make them, but he did not say what these sacrifices would be. He kept the details hidden. When reporters asked him what specific cuts Canadians could expect, he only said that the budget would show everything. This lack of clear answers made many people worried and created uncertainty. This situation created big political problems for Carney. His government was a minority government. This meant his party did not have enough seats in Parliament to pass laws alone. He needed other political parties to agree with his budget. If they did not, the budget could fail. A failed budget would mean a federal election. This was a very real risk, especially since the last election was only 6 months before. Opposition parties quickly shared their concerns. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre said that Canadians had already made many sacrifices. He felt the government should cut taxes, not public services. The New Democratic Party, led by Don Davies, warned that they would not support a budget that reduced help for ordinary Canadians. They wanted continued investment in important social programs. The Bloc Québécois also had specific demands. They wanted more money for health care and support for older people. This balancing act, promising both more spending and less spending, was a core tension in his economic vision. He aimed to manage large government debt while also keeping Canada's top credit rating. Carney had to convince these different parties to support his plan, even though their demands were often very different from each other. The date for the budget was November 4. Everyone waited to see the full details of his plan. The success or failure of this budget would decide the future of Carney's government and perhaps Canada itself. 8. What happens next? This is a very important time for Canada's future. Prime Minister Mark Carney has shared a big plan. It is a bold vision for the country. But his plan also has different ideas that seem to go against each other. For example, he wants to protect the environment and make Canada greener. At the same time, he plans to develop new oil and mineral projects, like those in the Ring of Fire region. These two goals can be hard to achieve together, creating a challenge for the government. Everyone is now waiting for November 4. This is the day the new federal budget will be shown. This budget is very important for Canada's path forward. Mr. Carney leads a minority government. This means his party does not have most of the seats in Parliament. So he needs help from other political parties to approve his budget. If the budget does not get enough support, it could lead to another federal election very soon. This makes the political situation tense and uncertain, with high stakes for all. Mr. Carney has said that Canadians will need to make sacrifices. He wants government departments to find 15% in savings over the next 3 years. However, he has not yet told people what these specific sacrifices will be. This makes some citizens and other parties worried. They want to know what parts of government spending will be cut, especially since he also promises many new investments in different areas. His plan aims to make Canada stronger and more independent in its economy. He wants Canada to rely less on the United States for trade, and to find new paths for economic growth, like expanding trade with countries in Europe and Asia. This will mean big changes for Canadian businesses and workers as they adjust to new markets and rules. The new plan includes large investments in housing, a stronger military, and nation-building projects across the country. These large projects and new spending will cost a lot of money. The choices made now will shape Canada for many years to come. The success or failure of Mr. Carney's plan will decide how the country develops. It will affect everything from how much money the government has, to how people live, and how Canada stands in the world. The budget on November 4 is the next big step in this important journey. People will be watching closely to see the details of the sacrifices and the new investments. What do you think will be the biggest challenge for Canada in the coming years?
Hey there! Just a second before you go. If you learned something new today, please give this video a like, write your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second, and it really, really helps to create even better English videos for you. Your support means the world. Thank you.